So thank you very much, and thank you again for all your presentations. They have been really inspiring, and it's been really good to hear from such great experts. So thank you for that. So in my presentation, I'm gonna basically try to be quick because I think we are quite over time at this point, and probably we are all hungry and want to visit Budapest because it's such a nice place. So I will try to be as quick as possible. I am following in my presentation basically the questionnaire that I have previously sent out. So first of all, I would like to talk some about the Hungarian nuclear landscape, let's say, then followed by the regulatory organ, then the main legislations governing the sector, followed with the licensing procedures, and ended with the prospect of SMR deployment in Hungary. So Hungary has a relatively long history with nuclear energy. In 1966, an agreement was signed between Hungary and the USSR on the construction of a power plant in Hungary. This turned out to be Paks 1, housing 4 VVR 440 reactors that became operational between the period of 1983 and 1987. These power plants supplies around 44% of the electricity produced in Hungary, so we can play that it plays a very significant role in the Hungarian electricity sector. Operating licenses for the reactors were extended between the period of 2012 and 2017 for 20 more years, so they will be operational most likely until the period between 2032 and 2037. Although there are already talks about maybe some additional extension to these operating licenses. Nuclear legislation has kind of evolved hand in hand with the Paks project. The first act in the sector came to be in 1964. Then in 1980, the first comprehensive act was adopted in Hungary. And in 1996, the Act on Atomic Energy was adopted. That still governs the sector. However, it has been amended several times due to reasons such as our accession to the European Union or our accession to several international conventions. Plans for expanding nuclear capacities in Hungary came up pretty early on. However, they more or less materialized in the 2007 Teller project. It's named after Teller Ede, who is a famous Hungarian physicist who participated in the infamous Manhattan Project. In 2009, following up on this Teller project, the Hungarian parliament gave its preliminary consent decision in principle to construct a new power plant in Hungary, and in 2014 an agreement was signed between Russia and Hungary on the construction of a new nuclear power plant housing two 1000 megawatt electric reactors. With that, we can move to the regulatory organ. So in Hungary, the regulator is the Hungarian Atomic Energy Authority that is led by a single director. It's not a commission type regulator. Regulatory independence is a really important question. Some of you have already touched up on that topic, and in Hungary, this I think is an especially interesting question. Until 2022, this was a regular government organ. However, then they changed format and they became an independent regulatory organ. This format under the fundamental law of Hungary entails that they can issue decrees, the heads of these independent regulatory organs. Moreover, they enjoy greater independence from the government, and they have a reporting obligation to the parliament. So now that we are finished with the regulator, we can discuss the main legislations governing the sector. So as I've mentioned, the main act is the 1996 Act on Atomic Energy. It is more similar to a framework act, although it is detailed in some places. This enshrines the basic principles of nuclear law, such as nuclear safety, the responsibility of the licensee, transparency, international cooperation, and so on. However, with regards to licensing, it's not very detailed. The legislation that governs licensing issues is the 1-2022 decree issued by the authority. As you can see, this has been a decree that is already issued by the authority, but it's not as new as its name suggests, as it was an old decree that was reissued when the authority changed to an independent regulatory organ format. This decree has a general part. This basically covers some certain safety principles and functions of the regulator along with the responsibilities of the licensee. But more importantly, this decree has 10 annexes connected to it. These are called the nuclear safety rules. These are mandatory for the licensees, and these contain the details of the licensing procedures and the contents of the license applications. Beyond that, we have guidelines also issued by the authority. However, these guidelines are not mandatory, but they represent methods for meeting the safety requirements contained in those nuclear safety rule annexes. If these guidelines are followed by the licensees, then the methodology that they are using doesn't have to be proven that it's adequate for the authority. They accept it. However, if they decide not to follow these guidelines, then of course the authority is also going to evaluate the methodology. So with that, we can finally get to the licensing stages. So as some of you have already said, that licensing a nuclear power plant is a very complicated procedure. It involves multiple thousands of licenses. It's very lengthy and it's very costly. It's the same case in Hungary. So in my presentation, I would only mention some installation level nuclear safety licenses and some additional licenses that I think are connected to these and are very important. Hungary follows a multi-step approach to licensing. IAEA, by the way, also recommends this approach as it offers better regulatory oversight over the individual licenses. The first license that I would like to mention is the justification or decision in principle. This is required by the Euratom Safety Directive as well, and of course it is also enshrined in the Hungarian legislation. This is more of a political declaration rather than a license, and in the case of PAX 2, this license was, or declaration was done in 2009. When we go to the actual nuclear safety licenses, the first one is siting in Hungary. With regards to siting, the IAEA recommends again a two-step approach. First, to identify the potential locations, and then second, an assessment of the sites by the licensee. Hungary follows a similar procedure. We also adopted a two-step siting license. However, it's a bit different from that. First, we have a site inspection and assessment license. PAX 2 got it in 2014. Within this license, the licensee basically showcases to the authority the methodology that they are planning to use to evaluate the potential sites. And then the second license is the actual site license, in which they use this pre-approved methodology for the evaluation of the planned site. Before we get to the establishment license, there are two licenses that are worth discussing here that are needed and prerequisites to the establishment license to be issued. One is the authorization in principle for a power plant with a significant impact on the electricity grid. This is issued by another independent regulatory organ named the Hungarian Energy and Public Utility Regulatory Authority, and this is basically a license prescribed by the Act on Electricity, and it's for power plants that potentially have a significant impact on the electricity system and the electricity grid, so they are not going to be established without having adequate enough grid and electricity system capacities. This license, with regards to the establishment license, even before applying for the establishment license, the licensee has to have this license in hand. The other one, of course, is the environmental license. This license can be obtained during the, after applying for the establishment license, but the establishment license cannot be issued without it. This was issued by the Baranya County Government Office, where PAX 2 and PAX 1 is also located, and PAX 2 got this license in 2016, which, as you can remember maybe from the previous slide, that it was exactly the period between the two separate site licenses. So with that, you would think we would get to the establishment license, but not yet. We have maybe a pre-licensing stage, design review. In Hungary, what can be considered as one is this preliminary safety information. In this, the licensee is using data from existing plants with the same technology, but without any site-specific details, and it allows, of course, the authority to assess the safety of the plant pretty early on, and it has some practical consequences, as if the licensee submits this preliminary safety information, then the general licensing period for the establishment license, which is 18 months, goes down to 12 months. If they don't submit it, then they will have to it will have to be done in 18 months. And in the case of Paks-2, this license was submitted, or this application was submitted in 2015. So with that, we finally get to the establishment license. The purpose of this is to confirm that the planned nuclear power plant will be compliant with the safety requirements and the regulations. In Hungary, this is kind of an umbrella license. The establishment license in itself doesn't actually allow any establishment works. For that, additional thousands and thousands of additional licenses are needed, such as construction licenses, installation licenses, and manufacturing licenses, but these can only be issued after this installation level establishment license is issued. In this application, the licensee has to prove the technical and safety concept of the plant. For Paks-2, the documentation, just as you can see, was around 300,000 pages. So it's an incredibly lengthy application, and the license itself was granted in 2022 with certain hold points. The next stage that we have less experience with is the commissioning license, because we are not there yet. In this license, basically, what has to be proven is that the plant was built according to the design intentions and meets all the regulatory requirements. And in this case, as it was mentioned in the case of some other countries, the first system functionality tests and fuel loading and initial operation can be done, and this license is issued for 12 months. The last license before we can start producing electricity for the grid is, of course, the operation license. In this, updates to the final safety report have to be made, and the licensee has to demonstrate that the safe disposal of spent fuel and nuclear waste is managed adequately. And if it's in hand, then the licensee can start producing electricity for the grid. So some few words about the prospect of SMR deployment in Hungary. Regarding that, SMRs are now very discussed, and I think some countries in our region are discussing it more than Hungary. I would say that Hungary's position in being interested in SMRs is quite moderate. Although we can say that, for example, our Minister of Energy expressed that in around 2029 and 2030 he can see the start of an SMR project in Hungary, maybe located somewhere else than Paks, in an area of Hungary where there is a lot of need for additional electricity. And besides that, what we know so far is that, for example, the Hungarian Electricity Works company, which is also the operator of Paks, is potentially interested in the deployment of this technology. But as I've said, I think this is a lot less commitment as some other states around us have already expressed. With regards to the whole licensing framework and potential deployment of SMR and advanced technologies, we can say that the fundamental law, which is the Atomic Act in the sector, is kind of technology neutral. But if we go to the implementing legislation, such as the decree that I have mentioned, then we can see that it kind of reflects PWR technology. Not really surprisingly, as Hungary has had experience with that, but as far as I know, the situation is quite similar in some other countries of the regions. maybe Boris, you know more about it, but I think also in the Czech Republic that the fundamental law is kind of technology neutral, but as we go to the implementing legislations, then this PWR heritage comes up. So that might be a bit challenging for certain types of SMRs, we can say. Then the prescriptive nature of the legislation might also be an issue. And with that, we can say that in this situation, it's very important that the regulator works on maybe cooperating with other regulators on these issues, and maybe on how potential amendments can open way for more of these advanced technologies. And in this sense, we can say that our regulatory authority has signed multiple memorandum of understandings, for example, with the British regulator, but if I remember correctly, also with the Slovakia, we have some cooperation, and some of it also concerns SMR, the potential deployment of SMR technology. So with that, I would like to conclude my presentation, and I was really thinking what to say in the end as a final conclusion, but in my opinion, with this licensing procedure, and as I've heard many cases, the actual problems with the legal frameworks that govern licensing procedures only come up when we start licensing. So the thing is that maybe it's very difficult, but maybe this problem of licensing, if there is this nuclear renaissance, by time it will solve itself. So as the first plants in Hungary, also what people that are affiliated with Paks-2 say is that now, if we were to start licensing Paks-2, it would take like at least 5 years less to license than it took now. So what I can say is that maybe for the first plants, it's going to be difficult to again get into this notion of licensing, but maybe time will solve it. But also what I can maybe say as a conclusion is that international cooperation in this sense is probably going to be very important if this nuclear renaissance comes, because that could potentially save a lot of these hurdles with these initial licensing procedures as well. So thank you very much again for all of you for being here, and maybe we can do some short discussion, but if not, that's also not a problem, and we can just do the discussion during the dinner. So thank you.